Welcome to the How Are You Healing podcast, brought to you by the WNC Holistic Center, located at 390 South French Broad, here in Asheville, North Carolina. It feels good not to hurt. At the WNC Holistic Center, we work together to create a one-stop healing shop. If you have headaches, back pain, allergies, need to lose weight, or simply want to detoxify your body and have it run in a healthier state, call us at 828-255-8333 or visit WNCHolisticCenter.com. There's never a charge for a consultation, so we can assess risk-free how to help you have a healthier year. At the center, you will find acupuncture, biofeedback, colonics, chiropractic care, ozone therapy, Reiki, neurofeedback, massage, osteopathy, and therapeutic counselors, all working together to help you have the healthiest year ever. Call us at 828-255-8333.
Hey, I'm excited today to interview with you Elizabeth McCorvey. She's a master clinician, social worker. Her expertise is working with horses, so she does equine therapy. We're going to hear how her experience with racial trauma, working with clinicians, is her forte. Her website is Unbridled Connections, so stay tuned, listen in closely, and see if you can pick up any secrets on how to live a more peaceful life internally, so we can experience life more peaceful on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to just ask you that question, Elizabeth, how are you healing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been talking lately with people, especially therapists who are working with people of color and Black people especially, on healing and what that looks like. And I have this complicated relationship with healing, especially when it comes to racial and racialized stress and trauma, and how I think that I wonder about the expectation of healing when I'm still living in a world of systemic oppression. So I'm specifically talking about racial trauma in this sense. And what does it mean to expect myself to heal when I walk out the door and there's still, microaggressions and aggressions coming at me? So from that sense, since you were talking about both of us being healers growing up in this world, that's what comes to mind first.
Yeah.
And that then I was also thinking about the other areas that I'm healing. And then I think about how lucky I am to be in therapy and how much I love my therapist.
Yay!
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I saw that on your website, the way that you were playing light with you needing therapy, or we all needing therapy, and you having fun with that, which I agree. What was the thought that came through with healing? Oh, yeah, because you mentioned something, so just so that, I could see where we're at or need to retweak in thought. For me, healing, there's our body, obviously, the temple, and then there's our mind and how we interact with others and social and all that, and our spirit, which some of us may believe will leave the body someday, go somewhere where, I don't know. That's religion. I don't want to go there. I just want to
Next time.
know that there are, body, mind, and spirit and soul and all, those concepts. Is there anything outside of that? I don't know. There probably is.
I think body, mind, and spirit pretty well covers
Good.
it. There's
So
so much nuance, but
there's enough healing there.
Yeah.
So, and just to give you a bit of background from me too, like I had said to you, 20 years of practice in New York as a chiropractor, my vision became quite myopic in chiropractic college, where everything was, anybody needed an adjustment, a chiropractic alignment, and you're healing. You have diabetes, cancer, you need an adjustment because that's going to get that. So there's this left-wing chiropractic and a right-wing chiropractic group. So I'm not sure how our profession, but it ranges from just putting in an alignment to free nerve interference inside, which makes sense, all the way to chiropractors who want to really give pills and be medical or allopathic. So I found myself in the middle of that, and as time went on, I felt it was lacking as a profession. Chiropractic alone by itself, to me, would not serve if there wasn't a proper balanced nutrition, if there wasn't proper balanced stretches if there wasn't proper balance, muscle tone.
Right.
So I started to open it up and say, I think I'm more than a chiropractor. I'm a larger healer with chiropractic as a component of that. So in talking to my coach 15, 20 years ago, he said, well, let's back up here. And what is it to you that's the most important thing in your world? And I said, no, I had kids, actually. My kids are 18 and 20 now, so it was my children. So it's like, my kids are number one. And he kind of made a face like that. And I was like, I'm Italian. Kids, family's the... And he said, well, there's something more important than that. And I said, okay. I'm guessing you mean me and my health. And he said, yeah. That's if you don't have your health, how can you take care of your kids? So you put yourself number one first. You take care of you, and then you can go out and fix the world. But you can't fix the world if you're broken. So fix you. So I thought, wow. So I'm adjusting people to get them out of pain. And well, I have to stop because you went there.
Yeah.
On that. What's that thought?
Yeah. I'm sticking on that part about you can't fix the world if you're broken, which I understand what that means. And I think there's a piece of there are lots of us walking around the world broken in different ways and continuing to move forward. And sometimes the brokenness is what helps us heal people in different ways. And even the word broken, I don't know. I'm changed in this way, and therefore I can see the changes that you've gone through, and we can walk this path together because I know what that's like. Like, I don't necessarily have to be whole in order to move forward, but...
Right, and I don't think he meant that.
Sure.
I think he meant if you're not working on you,
right,
and you're broken, and you stay that way, it's hard to get out and make impact. So that's when I started to open up the Holistic Center here 20 years later, whatever, where it's all different therapies and different practitioners, yourself included. That's part of our pact here. We're the same family when it comes to wanting to make a better impact on ourselves and on the people around us. I'm speaking for you. So that this way we can have more peace and abundance and live in a more glorified way, get excited to wake up in the morning and live through the day knowing that things are going to be fair all over. Yeah, okay. It's a journey.
Yeah, definitely.
So the college that I went to, nothing is bigger than life. Nothing is bigger than life. Those 5 words run through me. Nothing is bigger than life. And our health is our expression of our life. So when for years I've practiced, your life is the most important thing. You have to cherish that. Your health is an expression of that. Your health is the most important thing. We don't want to force life into you with respiration and pills. We want you to naturally express the gift that's been given to you from the powers and nature that be. My struggle was putting people in alignment, getting their nervous system clear, because that's where it starts, and I still believe that. I don't care how much vitamin C or meditation you take. If there's crunching stress on the nerves inside that we can just undo, let's start there and flower from there. Because the first 10 years of my practice, people were leaving the office feeling better, but getting cancer.
Right.
They were feeling better, going, oh, my neck pain is, the chiropractic belief, neck and back is better, and then wind up becoming diabetic. They were having heart problems. I'm like, this is not fulfilling. I don't want to fix you up to feel better so you can walk into disease. That sucks. So my concept of taking in more and learning more about this thing called health, which is the expression of life, which is 100% of our maximum genetic potential. I'm addicted to wanting to find out how can we have that unfold. Now, the last thing I want to do is do that to somebody and then have them go out and experience a cop that's not thinking. And then all of a sudden, they lose their life, and they've been working on their spine, their nervous system, their meditation. They've been taking care of themselves, but there's this force out there that exists that they can't fix, they can't work on. So that's what really has me on edge here with understanding, and I never understood it. I didn't understand that the powers that be, the blue line powers out there, are against, not against white and black. They're, we have more rights as people than I even knew because of YouTube and watching someone get pulled over and being questioned. The person going, "You can't ask me that. You don't have a right to do that." And I'm like, "We don't. They're the police." So I can stop here saying that I understand Black Lives Matter, and then I hear people going, "All lives matter," because life matters and all lives do matter. But I think, and I'm giving my perspective, I think Black Lives Matter means, no. There's something more unfair that's happening in our world around color. And that needs to be fixed because there's no way we can be healthy as a society unless that's fixed. There, I'm done.
Yeah, it made me think. Your last thought made me think of. I heard a great, not a rephrase, but just where is the emphasis in Black Lives Matter? And for the people that say all lives matter, which is true, all lives do matter, and they place the emphasis on the word matter. So it was italicized. So Black Lives Matter, saying historically our lives haven't been valued in the same way. Like a long history of our lives not mattering in the same way, and then a short history where they've, claimed equality. They being the government, the nebulous they, the government. And I really liked what that did for the phrase because it's not saying bold, underlined, italicized, Black Lives Matter at the exclusion of anything else. It's saying Black lives, emphasis, matter. They matter. This matters. My life matters.
I hear that.
So I really enjoyed that. That it wasn't a shift for me because I've always thought that Black Lives Matter, and I was curious about it for people that are still having trouble understanding.
Oh wow! Well, I am as guilty as can be when it comes to understanding having privilege, white privilege. I mean, I'm going to be 60. And it wasn't but for a few years ago that one of my coaches was going, "You don't get this?" Because he got it better than I. And I'm like, "No, I don't understand." He's like, "Okay." And I had to go through multicultural training within the Mankind Project to understand, oh my gosh. And when that was reframed for me, I just felt this empathy that I never had before because I just was ignorant to understand. My daughter, 4 years old, Juliana, no, she had to be in 3rd or 4th grade. Probably 3rd grade, came asked one night at dinner, "Daddy, am I black?" And I said, "What?" And she goes, "Am I black?" And I said, "Honey, no. Why would you ask that question?" And she said, "Well, because my girlfriend is black. She said she's black, and I love her so much, and I want to be black." And that twisted my head because the kids, when they say they don't see color or don't understand color, we start training them to understand the differences in color because her girlfriend in 3rd grade had to understand she's black. But my daughter didn't need to understand she's white. So I was like, oh, there's a problem here. I didn't understand the problem and still don't. What would you speak to that?
Yeah, I think, so kids definitely they are aware of color. I think kids know so much more about the world than we do in so many ways. And they're able to accept so much information because they haven't had pounds and pounds and pounds of societal expectation piled on them. So for them, for kids, they have black friends, they have white friends, they have brown friends, they have friends in wheelchairs, friends who don't speak the same or don't speak as clearly, and they can open up their world to that. I think sometimes what happens is because parents struggle with talking about race, then when their child tries to bring it up, and it doesn't sound like you did this, when their child tries to bring it up, the parent feels awkward and on the spot and like, no, we don't talk about that. And then the kid thinks, oh no, what do I do? This is confusing now because with my friends, I feel like there are no barriers. And then my parents are telling me that there is something there. They're not explicit about what. They aren't telling me exactly what to do. And now I'm confused. And then it becomes another layer of confusion. And I think that's what's happened so much. What happens with adults is that because we aren't, especially white adults, they aren't socialized to talk about race. They don't have that same talk that maybe your daughter's black friend did. So then as adults, when we try to talk about race, it's hard. It's harder.
Okay. So how would you say the reason we are where we are today with black and white is this? I know, not very simple.
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
Colonization,
Okay.
Westernization, the idea that there's only one right way to do things and the individual is more important than the collective.
Okay.
Two really big ideas, but particularly the colonialist supremacist notion that everybody needs to fit in this box, and if you don't fit in this box, you're doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody outside of that box, and everybody is outside of that box and is trying to get in that box, is constantly building towards this ideal that can't be achieved. And I think that's the root of so many pathologies, diagnoses, ailments of society, stressors certainly.
Have you seen the series Roots?
I haven't, but it's on I've got such a long reading list right now. Reading list, watching list.
So that impacted me as a child, watching Kunta Kinte, one of the first slaves being brought over. And the story around this is that the colonists were told that they're finding people that are lesser. They're not really human. They're between animals and humans. And they're bringing them over here because there's so many of them on this other side of the world. And they're workers. And they were sold this story so that they can have a reason or rationale to hide their heart, to treat people differently. So way back hundreds of years ago, we have these black people that are being used as tools and white people that are looking at them as products. And then after so many years, the story isn't bought. And we'll say, this isn't real. This can't be. So they need to be released. So then the slaves become released, and they're like, what are we going to do now? Where are we going? No job, no money. So there's this situation that existed back then. Here you are, I'm going to guess, generations ago. You are a great grandchild of a slave. Or that might not be true because you're not African American. Are you African American?
I am, yes.
Okay. Which means that your heritage is that somewhere down your line, someone came from Africa.
Where in Africa? I don't know.
Right. And that means that all the dysfunction and challenges got passed down generation to generation to generation to you. And that's the same for everyone that's truly African American. Because some people aren't. They're black, but they're not African American.
Right.
Is that why we are where we are today? Because of this mentality going way back hundreds of years, leading to poverty, leading to challenges where the black are trying to fit in.
When you say that, you mean because of the ways that our genetics have been changed by the trauma and stress that we experienced.
I never thought of that. The genetics can be changed, I would think.
Well, yeah, sure. But I was asking, is that what your question is?
No, I'm just thinking if I was brought over to Africa and it was reversed, and then they said, you're free, I'm going to go, where the hell am I going to go? I'm just, can I stay here and work on the farm? Because if I go anywhere, then there's going to be a problem because I'm still going to be looked at as inferior just because you say the rule is gone. And my kids are going to grow up with this suppression, this awkwardness, and their kids, and there's going to be a chain reaction all the way down to 2020. And that's going to lead to problems with my white culture over in another country. That's what I think, in my ignorant place, why we are where we are, is because there's never been a real fair start.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that's
Yeah, so there's this, I wish I could think of the name of the video. It's this woman who speaks really passionately about why we are where we are, and the 400-year, at least 400-year head start that white Americans have over Black Americans, and the way that even as we started to build ourselves up, it was destroyed, and then we build more and it was destroyed, and we build more and it was destroyed. And now things are supposed to be equal, but we've had such an unfair shake, like historically, when I say genetically, I mean in terms of all the trauma that has been passed down through generations and generations, to expect everybody to suddenly be able to be on the same page is not fair or realistic. And then that makes me think of how amazing it is that we've endured this long and continue to show up and thrive in spaces where we're not supposed to be and that society does not want us to be. Yeah.
okay. So where we are now, the work that you have to do around racial trauma, it's coming to a head. I mean, we're at a place now that between the pandemic and between Black Lives Matter, that it's just unusual history making. We're going to be looking back at this time and really seeing a lot of hindsight, I'm going to guess. But while we're in it and we're alive within it, what I would love to see happen is, it's hard for me to understand the difference in culture that brings one of us one step up. Because naturally, I feel one step up since I've been born against blacks, because I've always heard there's more crime, more problems, more trouble, more poverty. So that's the privilege. Do you sense, as you grew up, one step down, less privileged? Do you feel that? Is that ingrained in your fiber?
That's a hard question to answer. I was raised by parents who taught me that I was absolutely not inferior to anybody, and that I would have to work twice as hard to get half as much. So, the feeling of inferiority was ingrained in me, not by my parents or my home environment, but certainly in school, and in camp, and anywhere where I was in contact with adults who were white and did not understand me or where I was coming from, or didn't know how to work with Black children because they didn't have any Black folks in their lives other than maybe the children they were working with, and the parents of those children. So I would say I was aware of that power imbalance starting in probably preschool, and that endured all the way through most of my education. And that's where I spent most of my time, right? 8 hours a day I was in school for 13 years. So that's pretty pervasive.
So your parents made you aware of it, and I'm going to guess most parents do. And do you think that happens with white kids? Do you think white kids what do you think happens on that?
I think what happens is society is bent toward protecting white people from discomfort. And since it's uncomfortable for them to talk about race and address inequality, I think those topics don't always come up. I can't speak for every white home in the world, but my guess, and this just comes from working with white families in my therapy practice and growing up around white culture, my guess is that it doesn't come up in the same way.
That's right. I agree.
Because it doesn't have to.
Right. It never did for me. So, and I can't speak for everyone either, but I can speak for a lot of white folks that
Or if it did come up, it was in the context of, we're all equal, we love everyone, which is nice, but not necessarily true in that way.
For me, it was, that's where trouble is. There's going to be more problems there. Stay away, be careful, be cautious.
Right, and when you're a kid and you're being told, be careful, be cautious, also we love everyone, also your friend is great, your individual one friend is great, but everyone else that looks like him might be scared, but also love everybody.
Yeah.
Might
I'm
be
not
scary.
prejudiced. I have a black friend.
Right.
It's like,
And that cognitive dissonance that we get really like spoon-fed into us when we're kids is enduring and causes discomfort, and that's why it doesn't get addressed.
right. So what would you like to see happen? This is a magic wand. You just touch it, and then that happens, and everything is the way that Elizabeth thinks it should be. If you were to speak for the black people too.
Oh, I can't do that.
Okay.
That's not possible. I'm only one black person. But I can say that for me, and in the conversations I'm having with other black and brown people in my life, it really, what comes up consistently is the idea that having conversation is so important. And not just having the uncomfortable dialogue about race, but white people and the people in power. And I say that because since we're all in this white supremacy culture paradigm, we're all impacted by it. So I also need to be having conversations with people about what it means to disrupt this binary society that I've been placed in. But the magic wand for me, I think, is conversation. So if white people can have conversation with each other about what they're doing, the awareness that's coming up around their relationship with their own internalized white supremacy, with their race, with their what it means to be white, just conversation. I think having dialogue with each other about what it means to walk through the world in a brown body or in a black body, in a white body, and what that means.
So you ever come across someone that is missing an arm and a leg or something like that, and they're a cashier, and you walk up and you wouldn't be like, wow, your arm's gone, what happened? Right? But they know that people are thinking that.
Right.
But then after so many encounters, they forget what people are thinking, I'm guessing.
I don't think so.
They'll still be thinking that?
Yeah, but maybe not like, it's not glaring all the time. It's just this tape running in
All
the
right,
back.
there's a little thing. Okay, I can see that. I think that's what's happening with culture. There's so much. So conversation, wow, that would if we could only have people that would be experts in having conversation and teaching other counselors. I'm leading up to your profession. You can smell that. So I want to get there because that's really the heart of what I want to have here. But I just want to understand, I'm just taking advantage of you and your knowledge and being free and knowing I'm no expert clearly in understanding multicultural at all and want to. I really, really have a strong desire to understand how I can make a difference.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Because I think if you wait for you to be an expert, you might be waiting to have this conversation like a very long time from now. I don't know that I'm not an expert in the Black experience. I'm an expert in my own experience, and I've talked to enough people that I can say, here's what I think some of your clients of color may need from you if I'm talking to someone, or here's what I think that your Black friends, your Black colleagues may need from you, but I can't speak with certainty. And what I'm getting to with that is that you are an expert of your own experience. So you can say, I am walking through this world in this way, and I know what I've experienced. I am learning about how people experience me and how I experience others due to my biases. And you can speak directly to that because it's your experience. So you don't have to wait for an expert to come along. I think you should continue consulting with experts and talking to them and paying them to consult with you and all of that. And you can have this conversation today if you want to.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
How do we start?
That's a good question. I love that question because there's this idea that, so one of the tenets of white supremacy and supremacy culture is this idea of perfectionism. Like, if you're not going to be perfect at it, you shouldn't do it. And I think there's so much value in saying, like, you know what? I feel so awkward about bringing this up because we've never talked about this before, and I feel weird. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but I feel like we need to talk about race right now. And that humanness that brings, like, you don't have to be perfect.
Right.
But you know that there's an issue, and you know that you don't want to sweep it under the rug.
Right.
So it's okay to say, like, I might suck at this and I want to do it anyway. I don't want my fear of sucking at it to hold me back from having the conversation anyway. Because the worst thing that happens maybe is that you feel very embarrassed and you do it wrong and somebody gets upset with you, but you don't burn up to a crisp. You don't get zinged out of the face of the earth. You don't get paraded in front of thousands and ideally, talked about for people to throw things at you. Most of the time it's just embarrassing. And if you can tolerate the discomfort and the embarrassment, then you can go in front of anybody and talk about anything.
All right, I'm going to pick something.
Yeah.
With all the videos and the YouTubes out there, I see a black man screaming to other African Americans, "Why did you wreck my store? Why did you do this? I came from the ghetto and I worked at this and you guys are doing this." So looking at that, that's confusing to me. How would you speak to that? What's happening there?
A lot is happening there. A lot of trauma, I think, is happening there. A lot of deep grief, I think. I think there are more than two sides, but I'm going to speak to just the two that I'm seeing. I assume you're talking about like the riots and the protesting and the looting that ensued. So there's that component and the deep grief that they must be feeling and the long, long, long history of peaceful protest and saying, hey, please see me as my brown self. Please do not disenfranchise me. Please do not oppress me. And the asking and the asking and the asking, and finally the demanding of it. And what that means to have to scream and yell and destroy things in order to feel heard. And then I also see, like you said, a man who has built things up, or built up his property and his storefront and his success and what it means to have that torn down. And the trauma and the grief that he's experienced in the same way. And so I see two different sides that are seemingly perceived to be against each other, but who are probably experiencing some similar real collective grief and are navigating it in different ways. And that also makes me think that because Black and brown people and African Americans, since we're not a monolith, there are 100 different ways that we might go about our liberation. And there's not, if you're waiting for one Black voice to come out, I think everybody is waiting for Martin Luther King to come out. But we're not a collective. We're not one voice. There are a lot of voices. So there are the voices that say, we've got to come at this through the destruction of what the representation of capitalism, and that would lead to Black liberation. And some people say we've got to completely abolish, defund police forces. You've got people that say we need to, and I cannot think of the word, be respectable. You have to be respectable and compromise. And so when you're naming that situation, I'm just seeing the nuance of the myriad different ways that we can look at what it means to become free as a society and as a collective of people. I don't know if that answered your question at all.
It touched many pieces of it. It's just confusing as a white male to watch what's happening and try to understand that this is not one thing. Obviously, there's multiple things happening here because I've seen African Americans screaming at other African Americans, or Blacks screaming at Blacks, and one saying, "I am not African American. I'm American." And I was like, unless his family then that doesn't come from Africa. So what's happening with that? What do I need to understand with Black, brown, African American?
Everybody identifies differently.
Okay.
I mean, I tend to prefer that people, I actually really prefer brown because my pants are black, my skin is brown. But I also don't mind if people call me African American. You'll have folks that do not come from Africa and have dark skin and prefer just black, or they might be Dominican, they might be Puerto Rican. There are people of dark skin from all cultures.
Right.
So
darker skin. I like that.
Yeah. So
But it still references from white.
Sure. Yeah,
So there it is.
darker than what?
Right.
Yeah,
So
there's that reference point.
Right? I just caught myself going, wait, I have lighter skin. Meaning that you,
But it's also factually correct. I mean, you think
Right.
about the chromatic scale of what we can see with our eyes. There's
Right.
lighter and there's darker.
yes.
And that's a good point. The reference point, if you go to a different part of the country where people are generally darker skinned, then darker than what becomes darker than a different color. But
Yeah.
here in America, we're talking about darker than your skin color. You look like you're about to say something.
This other picture I have. Because sometimes, white people are screaming out there, I see on the video, Black Lives Matter. And I'm looking at them going, they have other issues that they're getting out through Black Lives Matter. I don't think it has anything to do with them understanding what's really happening. Especially this one lady that was screaming at a black cop. There's the line of cops who are there, and she's screaming at a black cop, Black Lives Matter, and he's looking at her, and they kind of zoomed in on his face, and he's just, how do you speak to that?
Yeah, again, it's all so nuanced because when I think about that cop, I think about there are lots of black people and brown people in the police force who are still carrying out the same problematic behaviors that we're seeing captured on video, right? And because black people aren't a monolith, because they're all individual, you have to think about what's coming to mind is the systemic racism. How it works is that even if there are no bad people in the system will still do harm. So even if that black cop is awesome and doing his job and believes that Black Lives Matter, he still has to maintain a system, and the system is inherently oppressive towards black and brown people. So when I think about your image, I'm thinking about this white woman screaming to this cop, Black Lives Matter, and my thought is that she's speaking towards the system that doesn't value black lives, not maybe necessarily this one
Right.
cop.
That's the only thing I can get from that too. So seeing that we're there together. So going back to healing and life being the most important thing, would you say that the primary problem right now that's occurring as of the last day of June, if it is that, 2020, is that if the police all across the country would just view black and white as the same, that would help protect more black people. That would help the judgment, the maljudgment that's occurring in officers, and maybe even in black officers' mind. Last night watching a TikTok, it was a YouTube, I don't know, one of those social, cops pulling up and asking a black guy, what are you doing here? He's just parked in front of a store that's closed. He says, I'm just parked here. He's like, well, let me see your license. And then, of course, there it goes. And so then you can't see that and all that stuff. It's like, would he have done that if it was a white guy? Maybe, I don't know. But because of what happened with George, that this is it popped. The straw that broke the camel's back. That did it. Enough is enough with cops thinking black people cause more problems than white people. Is that a statement that's right?
Not exact. I mean, that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for white people. We've known. I mean, the straw was, I can't even pinpoint one straw. It was 1619 when we were brought over in the first place. But I'm thinking.
And what I'm trying to say is that it's about cops right now.
That's right. That was your question.
It's not, I mean, if the cop situation was clear, then it would be like, okay, now let's look at the jobs. Okay, now the jobs is, okay, let's look at the government. Why is there only one black president? Why isn't there more? Like, there's many layers of this to look at. But right now, what has to get fixed, because there's defund the police. What do you mean defund the police? I don't want to defund the police. The police are protecting all of us. That's what I think. I see a cop coming by, I feel safer.
Must be nice.
Right. That's the problem.
Yeah, but I don't think it starts with cops. I think because when I think about the cop pulling over someone in a neighborhood, I think about where's that neighborhood? Is it a neighborhood that's been gentrified and redlined? Why has it been gentrified and redlined? Whose property taxes are paying for this education to keep it this way? What city are we in? What monuments are close by? What collective understanding do we as a community have about the value of people's life? I think it's just like so layered. I think it looks like cops right now, but it's so much more layered than that, so much more nuanced than that, I think. And I don't know where it starts. And I don't think that we have to pick one thing. I think that's another white supremacy culture myth that we get, that we have to do this thing, and then we have to do this thing, and then we have to do this thing. But health isn't like that. That's why you have this center that's devoted to really solving all the interconnected things that comprise a person's health, right? It's navigating all of these things in little ways at the same time. That's what I think.
Wish it was a clearer answer to these things.
That would be nice. That would be really nice.
But the way you said layered is true. Everything is layered, same as health, trying to figure out why things aren't working. Most of the time, it's not, it's an answer of what's interfering with nature, what's interfering with the natural process. So I'm going to guess that there was some time where you were a younger girl and your heartstrings started to pull in the direction of, I just want to help. I want to serve somehow for you to wind up where you are. What was that? What's your story there?
I think, so I'm a social worker. I got my bachelor's in social work and my master's in social work. And it was a mentor I had when I was in middle and high school who was a social worker. And she was, I just so looked up to her. And so when she went to school for social work, I was like, I'm going to do that. I want to do that. I want to be just like her. I want to help people just like she helped me.
Does she know that?
I think so.
Got Facebook her?
Yeah, right. I'm sorry, I talked about her. Her name is Lee. Actually, she, when I grew up in Kentucky, which is the horse capital of the world. So I started riding horses when I was 10. And she sold me my first, or she gave him to me, really. She gave me my first horse.
Wow.
And so just working with her and getting to know her and emulating her, wanting to be her, I wanted to be her. And so I started that journey saying, when I was a bachelor's level student, saying, I want to be just like Lee. I want to help people the way I feel like Lee helped me. And then that kind of evolved into like, there's so many other ways that I can help people. And so it kind of evolved that way.
She black or white?
White.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, equine therapy? Tell me about that.
Yeah, equine assisted psychotherapy. So I was a master's level student. I did my internship at a place in Tennessee. I got my master's in Knoxville, and they had an equine assisted psychotherapy program in Maryville, Tennessee, where they worked with, I think, mostly at-risk youth, although they did have some adults that they worked with, using this modality. It's called the EGALA model, Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. And all of the work is on the ground. And there's always a mental health professional, an equine specialist, and one or more horses, and the client. And what I find that it does is, when somebody gets in the arena or in a field or in a stall with a horse, I feel like so much of like the vulnerability and anxiety and stuff comes out because this animal is big, it doesn't speak the same language, it doesn't necessarily have the same priorities as you do. And so it really forces you to look at how you're approaching another being, how you function under stress, which is often why people come to therapy, mental health therapy, because they are not functioning in a way that's working for them under stress. And And it allows them to practice different ways of being with a being that is not judging them, that will never judge them, that is always reacting to them, always aware of them, and always giving them information about how they're showing up in that relationship.
Yeah, so cool.
So if you come up to a horse posturing and aggressive, the horse might set a boundary. It might say, like, I don't want to be around you. If you shift your behavior, the way you approach that horse's behavior might change. And that's so applicable to humans, right? Like, if I shift my behavior, if I shift the way I've said something or the way I show up, then the way other people respond to me might also shift.
So when you work with somebody, you may work with the horse?
Yes.
And as you work with the horse, you're going to watch the horse and the person.
So the way I break it down is, so as a mental health professional, I'm watching the person and how they're interacting with the horse. My equine specialist is watching the horse and how they're interacting with the person. And the two of us are as the client, so we might say, just introduce yourself to the horse. We might invite the client to do that. And as the client is doing that, I'm kind of watching how they're approaching and what they're saying, what they're doing. And my equine specialist is watching how the horse is reacting, and the two of us are giving information back and forth to each other. And then when the client comes back, we might start with, how was that for you? And I might have observed that they had an awesome time and they loved on each other. And then the client might say, that horse hated me. So we work really hard not to put our judgments on what the client experienced, and let them tell us their story about what happened to them. Because then that gives me information about how they're approaching humans in the world, how they're interpreting their own stress in the world. And we're not here to give advice. What we do is facilitate a conversation where the client identifies the problem, identifies possible solutions, and then is able to enact those in the moment right there with the horse. So if the client said to me, I think that horse hated me, I might say, like, what about trying to approach him in a different way? Try something different. Or what's two other reasons why that horse might have reacted to you in the way that they did? And then the client might go back and shift their behavior and see what happened that time. Right. So it's fun. I really enjoy it. Yeah.
Wow. I just got a picture, because of our previous conversation about black and white, of, is the horse black, white? Does it make a difference? Do any horses look at each other and go, oh, you have spots, you have this color,
they're not like that.
Color?
No.
You know, how nice it would be if just
we have
all
a lot
the people
to learn from horses,
would work like horses. So how does racial trauma, how do you work with somebody with, what is racial trauma?
That's a great question. Very nuanced answer. So we know that trauma is a reaction to stress, to a highly stressful event. And racial trauma specifically is when a person is reacting to an event that happened that is grounded in some kind of systemic oppression specifically related to race. So watching videos of somebody dying, a black man dying at the hands of police, for example, is maybe traumatic for me to watch. I maybe experience symptoms that are reactions to the trauma that I experienced watching that video.
And how would, because you have clients that come to you for all different traumas, and if it's a person of color, that means that there's that area you're going to touch always, or? Not
always. It really is up to the client.
Okay.
So what I do is I open the door. So I say from the beginning, I might say, like, I know that this might be an issue because you're a brown person walking in the world. If there's ever anything you want to speak to about any of that, I'm here to listen. Gotcha. And if they never bring it up again, that's absolutely fine. And I need to have in my mind, as they bring up separate issues, the structure of oppression that allows some of these injustices to happen that lead to the trauma that they're experiencing, even if on the surface it looks like it has nothing to do with race. I'm thinking specifically, like, if a woman, a brown woman or a black woman, has a miscarriage and they come to me in my office for therapy, then it looks like, of course, I'm treating the grief around the miscarriage. And as a therapist, I may not say this out loud, but it's my responsibility to understand the nuance about how Black and brown women, I've read a statistic, and I think this is correct, that Black and brown women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth because there's a long history, and I know that this is true, there's a long history that Black women don't experience pain in the same way that had been pervasive throughout the medical community. And so Black women are not often believed when they say that they're in pain, or they're not given the same doses of medication as
Wow.
white women. Yeah, you should research that, because I'm speaking just from like my
We're right
what
next
I've
to a
read.
birthing center here. That would be important.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really interesting research about that. And I know that in my experience with my Black clients who are women who have delivered babies, they've talked about they've had really awful experiences about and not being believed about the pain that they were experiencing. And so it's what's the word? It's their experience, based on what I've read, is consistent with the experience that they've shared with me. So with that woman and who comes to my office to work on a miscarriage, I need to have in the back of my mind the injustices that are pervasive in that setting with women of color. And I might not say like, hey, yeah, that's really crazy because this studies show that Black women are not believed about their pain at the same rates of white women. I might not say that,
Sure.
I need to know that because it informs the way that I treat somebody.
What's an ideal client for you? Person that's you feel a good fit with, that you...
I work really well. I really love working with college students. One of my part-time jobs is that I work at the University of North Carolina at Asheville, and I work in their health and counseling center with college students, and I love working with college students. They're at such a fun age. So I love working with young adults. I love working with LGBTQIA identified people who are marginalized in some way, who are experiencing racial trauma, of course. But I really love working with anybody who is excited to do the work. Anyone who comes to my office and is like, I really want to work on this. I'm excited about this. I'm passionate about this. I want to share with you what's going on, and I want to move in the world in a different way. It's hard for me to work with people who come to therapy and I'm like, so what's on your mind today? And they're like, I don't know. That's really hard for me.
Not in touch with themselves. They're not conscious, possibly.
And they're great too, because it's never, I don't know, like you're in my office for a reason. And I want to uncover that with you.
Okay.
But I get really excited by people who are also excited.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I can feel that. By the way. I feel your passion on, that's really cool. I'm trying to think, well, how much of the work that you do is with horses versus?
It's really part-time right now because I keep saying yes to doing things. I love to do so many things. Like I've recently started doing more trainings for therapists on racial trauma. I work at UNCA part-time. I have an office in Hendersonville, North Carolina, where I see people in an office setting. And pretty much anytime someone calls me for a consultation, especially about race right now, like I want to do it. I get so excited. So I keep saying yes to things, but I need to start setting more boundaries so I can do more horse work. So right now it's really part-time, but we're hoping to expand some more this year. So I'll have to start saying no.
Okay. Yeah. Say no is a yes to you.
Yes.
Is the working with counselors something you want to pursue more also?
Yes, I love that.
Okay.
Therapy in the mental health world is really, really white. It's really, really Eurocentric. The models of therapy that we use are really like they're really binary. And if you go to a different culture in a different part of the world, they might look at us and be like, you mean you sit in an office and you talk for an hour and you expect to be healed by that? Are you serious?
Right.
But because we've created this standard around therapy, which is you come to me, you sit down, you tell me your problems, I tell you how to fix them.
Sure.
That doesn't work for everybody. And it certainly doesn't necessarily work for people of color who come from all different cultures and have all different things genetically ingrained in us for healing that don't align with that typical Western notion of healing.
Right.
And so I love working with therapists to help them understand that maybe there are different ways of doing things. Maybe the ways that we've been doing things are not effective and should not be used and generalized through everybody in society. I remember when I was in grad school, we were learning about some kind of play therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy, and the study that we read was conducted on lots and lots of groups of white kids. And I raised my hand and I was like, but what about what about black kids? What about Asian kids? What about, and someone in my class was like, well, they didn't test on everybody, but we know. And I was like, no, we don't. That's such an assumption. We don't know that because it works on white kids, that it works on black kids.
Right.
And so I really like teaching therapists that there are other ways of doing things. And it's okay to step away from that model of perfection. And it's okay to say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, I want to work through this in a way that may be non-traditional for me, but I'm going to research about it and learn about it so I can meet you where you are.
Yeah.
I love that part.
What is it when one of your clients or therapists get an aha, that moment? How do you feel when they get this, I guess, a new belief system? Is that what your product is? What's happening here? Because you're talking to somebody, you're bringing them around a horse, and then they're expected to go back out in the world and experience it differently. And they go, wow, this is the way the world is. It looks so different. What just happened there?
Yeah, a new neural pathway. I get pretty geeky about this, actually, because the way we live and do things in the world is our brain is all comprised of neural pathways,
right.
And we know how to I know how to reach for my cup of water because I've got a neural pathway that says point A to point B. I know how to do that. So it's all about creating new neural pathways for people. So when they try something new the first time and it works, that's that aha moment. And then they try it a second time, it works. They try it a third time, and it's the way that they learn new skills and they become open to doing things in a different way, and they discover a new part of themselves that they didn't even know was there, but has always been there.
Yeah. So neuroplasticity is the term for the creating of these new neural pathways. And if explained where we have little doors in our mind, and there's thousands of them, and they're shut and they're dark, and you get to open one of these doors so that one of your clients, by the way they walk around a horse and react, and you look at that person, your equine therapist looks at the horse, sit down with that person and said, did you notice this? How many times does this happen to you in life? How is that like your life? Then that person reframes, the door opens, and they walk out into life, and they experience, I don't know, their father, their mother saying something, and all of a sudden they don't have a reaction because they went through this process with you. That's my story. Is that how?
Yeah, that's really close. Yeah.
So give me a testimony, something that you can, without HIPAA violation.
Sure. I'm thinking about this. We don't work with kids anymore. I much prefer working with adults in equine therapy. But we did work with, she was 8, and she came in to the barn and everything was, how are you doing? I don't know. How's your week? I don't know. Like, didn't want to look at us, didn't make eye contact. Her parents had shared that she was struggling with self-confidence in a lot of areas in school, and so it was about 8 weeks, because this kind of equine-assisted psychotherapy is very short-term, solution-focused. And over the course of the time we worked with her, as we would say, where do you think your relationship with the horse needs to go today? And we wouldn't give her any answers, but we would support her and positively reinforce any answer that she gave us. So once she moved away from that I don't know and was able to say, like, maybe he wants to be brushed, then we'd say, awesome, let's do that. And so then it was her idea that she came up with, her interpretation of the relationship and what it needed, and then she'd go brush him. And then and little ways in that, like, maybe he needs to go for a walk today, maybe he just needs to be loved on today. And at the end of the 8 weeks, I have this image of her, like, and my horse is very big, like, he's bigger than the average horse, and she's like 3 feet tall. And I have this image of her, like she came up and told us, like without any question, she was like, he needs to go on a walk today. And then she like got the lead rope and clipped it to his halter.
Wow.
And I have this image of her just like marching through the field, probably like 500 feet away from, like, probably more. It was like on the others, it was far away from us, and she's just this little thing just like marching while the horse just like walks behind her just like confidently. And they did that. They like took 5 or 6 laps around, and that was her last session. It was like such a fun memory to leave with. And her parents told us that she's now like speaking up and asking questions and asking for help, and that was because she got to in therapy, and you know, probably because of lots of other things too, but she was having the experience of identifying what her needs were, being supported in them, being supported in her own solutions, and then being able to execute them in a way that felt right and powerful and good and correct for her.
Right.
And she was able to build up her confidence that way. So it
Wow.
was so fun to watch.
Think about the impact that she's going to take with her.
Yeah.
Remembering some teacher when I was younger,
I
long
know.
ago. That's cool. That's
Yeah.
great. So confidence is the story there. I mean,
Yeah, I love working with self-confidence.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Right.
fun.
Why do you think that is?
I think when you think about it, you know, in terms of confidence, like the only thing in your way is you. I mean, like I was saying earlier with you, and this probably applies to a lot of people, like you're not going to get thunderstruck out of the sky. You're not going to be paraded in front of people that throw things at you and tell you how embarrassing you should feel. Like the worst that you can feel is embarrassed. The worst thing that can happen is that you feel uncomfortable. And if that's it, if you can conquer that, then there's nothing in your way. You can try so many things. You can do so many things. So once you can learn to tolerate that feeling of discomfort, you can take that singing class, or you can do yoga in the park, or you can speak in front of people. Just developing a relationship, a positive relationship with your discomfort is such a powerful thing. And I love helping people see that.
So what would you say to people that are listening right now that they could do any kind of practice at home if they don't have a horse
Yeah.
and they don't have access to you? What could be done to help with confidence, microaggression you mentioned? What practices daily maybe?
Yeah. I think become familiar with the edge of your comfort zone and experiment with what it would feel like to push that boundary. So maybe you're not ready to go do an open mic, but you might be okay with singing a song on your porch. And then maybe inviting, while your friends are over, saying like, hey, can I try something with you? I feel super awkward and I'm going to mess up. And then it's just like identifying what those like incremental baby steps might be to like push that boundary a little further and a little further. And then afterward, after you do it, even if it's just singing to yourself softly on the porch, or even during, just like identifying where that embarrassment lives in your body and becoming comfortable with it and naming it if you want to. And then afterward, acknowledging like, wow, I survived this. And when I push the boundary a little further next time, I'm probably going to survive that too.
So that's cool. You gave me a flashback of a fear that I had when you said singing was doing karaoke. So it was a couple of years ago, and I said, I felt the fear of that and said, that's why I have to do that. And so studying personal development for years, I recognized that edge, the envelope. I knew right where that was. So it was in a very, very small local bar where no one was listening.
Yeah.
But that worked
Yeah.
because there was only one person, my partner, that was there, and I was like, got that out of the way.
Yeah.
And then it did lead to other times. So Yeah, that's great. So name it like George, huh? name. That's cool.
Yeah, because then you say, George, why are you doing this to me? We're trying to have a good time.
Right. So I'm gonna have to make you smaller and then invite you to leave one day.
Yeah.
So that.
Yeah.
So what's next?
And
So
remember that George is trying to protect you, and that's George cares about you probably more than everybody else in the world does. George is trying to be like, no, I love you and I want to save you.
George is a relationship manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's trying to manage us to keep us in that place. So that's confidence. What about microaggressions? I'm guessing we all have dozens of them. What might I do if I sense something boiling up? How do I work on that at home without the horse and you?
Sure. So let me just make sure we're talking about the same thing. When I say microaggressions, I'm talking about kind of the little jabs that marginalized people experience every day from people in the dominant culture that they don't realize is painful. And I think what you just described might be something.
Well, I think it could be a dominant culture, or it could be a parental abuse.
Sure.
An aggression is an aggression.
Okay.
Micro is small.
Yeah.
So what? Let's go racial, since that's a thing. Someone.
Sure.
I wouldn't have this now. I don't have any microaggressions.
Well, a microaggression, like if I said something to you,
Right.
I would be committing a microaggression against you.
Oh, yeah,
like-
you could against my culture.
Right, yeah. Which,
Yeah.
if I said, I'm.
White boy.
So it would be
Crackerjack?
harder for me to commit a microaggression against you because it's related to a system of power, and I don't have any power over you.
Gotcha.
Culturally, and also I'm in your office, in your space. You're closer to, well, you got a clearer line to the door, like all sorts of different things.
Oh wow.
So, but I think I can still answer your question. Like if you committed microaggression against me and I could feel
Okay.
that like,
Brown person is
Yeah.
experiencing microaggression.
yeah. Lately, my practice is that I've been naming it. Like, can I tell you about why that was not okay? I might say that.
Nice.
Not everybody can do that, and I'm not always in a situation.
Not everybody
right?
can
Not
ask
every-
that question because they've lost center. They've gone.
Yes.
Okay.
Because sometimes I get hit with microaggressions and I don't even realize what happened until later, or when I'm recounting the story and people are like, actually that was a microaggression or that was aggressive.
Right.
But because I'm in what happens when someone says something to me that I know that I immediately go into my survival brain. I immediately like do a little light dissociation.
Right.
Not a serious anything, but I know that my protective walls, my George comes out and says like, nope, we're going to put a wall and not address that because I don't feel safe addressing that right now. And I'm going to pretend it's not there. I'm going to
gotcha.
compartmentalize it.
Has that happened a few times right in this interview here?
No, I would have named it. Has it happened?
If it was, it might be so subtle, perhaps.
Yeah, it's because I'm on the spot right now. It's hard for my brain not to be like whizzing.
Okay.
And I think if I were to look back, I might have said, actually, I don't like when you said that. I don't like when you said that. I don't like when you said that.
Because that would hurt if you said that. It
Yeah.
would hurt me if you said I didn't like what you said that because I didn't mean to hurt you.
Sure.
So the art of this microaggression is what I call a disease. This might be new now for you. Acluism.
No, I don't know it.
That's acluism. One without a clue. So being acluistic, I have no idea if I speak out. Well, in a lot of cases, sometimes I have an idea, but I wouldn't do that then. If I have an idea, I'm conscious that I'm going to say something. But what tool would you give for the brown people, black people, people of color, anyone that's been suppressed, that when they feel being hurt, they feel something bubbling up, somebody said something, that they can center?
That question's a tricky one because I want to just quickly go back to what you said about, of course you didn't intend to, but racism isn't a question of intent. It's about how it was impacted. And of course I don't want to hurt you. And also, it's not about you. So, but you're right, there is that layer of like, oh, I want to name this, but I don't want to hurt him, even though I've been hurt.
Right.
And because he's a member of the dominant culture, he's got power over me, so do I even want to name this? So people of color and brown people are always, well, I don't want to speak to them as a monolith. I can only speak for myself. always going through this, like, the gears turning. Like, I would like to name this. I don't know if I name something and I offend him, I hurt his feelings. He's got more power in the community than I do. He could tarnish my name. This could be weird. He could, every time we see each other in public, he could contact people who he knows who have more power than I do. And so I probably will just let that slide. So it's a lot. So when I'm thinking about advice for brown people, I don't want to give advice to brown people. I want to give advice for white people about how they can recover from if they're called out on a microaggression.
Okay, let's go there.
Because you might not feel good if I said, actually, I really didn't like that you said that. Because then you're going to want to defend yourself. Maybe you might want to say, like, oh, well, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm a good person. I don't want to hurt you.
Right.
But that's not relevant because you did hurt me.
Right.
So my go-to for this with therapists and with people is thank you. I'm sorry. That's it. Because then if you start explaining and telling me how bad you feel, then I'm taking care of you and you've aggressed me. So I'm the one that needs to maybe be taken care of.
Right. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes. Thank you for letting me know how I hurt you. I don't want to do that. And I'm sorry. That's it. And you don't have to explain it. You don't have to, all we have to do is move on.
Move right past that.
Yeah. And you internalize it and you don't commit that act of aggression again. And you maybe do some research about why that was harmful and the systems that are perpetuated when you say those things. And you tolerate your discomfort because you don't feel good about it, but you can't stay in the conversation in a relationship with me unless you learn how to be uncomfortable.
Okay.
And you keep going forward.
All right. So now you struck my white chord. Because, okay, I'll work on that. But wait a second. What do brown people need to work on? What do people of color need to work on at this time? We all need to work. All right. So what would you say needs to be looked at this time that people need to hear right now?
I'm having a reaction to your question because our work is not the same. Actually, that is something that I have been saying too, like, I'm having a reaction.
I like that because it makes me go, okay, be sensitive now.
Yeah. Or, maybe be sensitive or just be aware.
Aware.
Yeah.
What's the reaction?
Yeah. Our work is not the same. So, yes, there is work that brown communities need to do, and there's work that white communities need to do. But in terms of the work that you need to do around the systems in your life that perpetuate systems of oppression and supremacy culture, I'm actively being harmed in that. So, and I don't have power to change those systems. You do. I think that the brown community needs to be continuing to work on what it means to continue to meet each other where we are and heal as a community. And what do I want to say?
Meet each other where you are and heal as a community.
Just that acknowledgement that because since we're also experiencing white supremacy culture and we're swimming in it just like you are, some of us are looking for like one leader to come out. We need to be one voice. We all need to be united. And that's not realistic because we're all different people. So what does it mean to even cross lines of like that store owner and that group of protesters? What does it mean for them to come together and figure out what their shared understanding of the situation is, and how can we all rise up together, maybe not necessarily with one unified voice, but how can our nuance even in this be respected? I don't know. Does that answer your question? There's a lot of thoughts.
No, it did, especially around the unification, being united and getting on one page, because I'm guessing there's... Go ahead.
No, not necessarily getting on one page, because I think Martin Luther King was right. Malcolm X is also right.
Two different pages.
They're in the same book, I guess. They're in different... I don't want to say chapters because that implies that one's ahead of the other. Maybe they're in different books. I don't know. They're just two different schools of thought that have the same, similar ultimate goals, but different ways of going about them, and both of them are valid.
Right.
And
I think my thought is... an example is I'm driving down the road today, and there's a car stopped in front of me at the stop sign, and with a New York background, it's like you stop, you look, you go. You don't need to wait 2-3 seconds, and the person must have done something, looked down, text or whatever, and I went to beep the horn, but it was a black person, and I stopped, and I'm like, okay, no, don't do that because this is not the right time. And so there's this confusion that's existing right now in this society, and I'm conscious of it. And that's really important, is for me to just stay conscious, because we have decisions and we're making thousands of them a day. So for the confidence, George, that's helpful. For aggression, I want to see everyone react less. I want to see everyone breathe into something that just happens. If you just said something that hurt me now, and I said, wow, that really hurt, I would want to be able to say that to you, and I would want you to be able to go, okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Like you said, that's great. What could you say right now that would help as a practice every day, potentially of consciousness, or I don't know what tool, because you use horses, and I'm trying to think of what could you share, so that if there was a person of color listening, a brown, black person, whatever it is, someone suppressed listening to this right now, that they felt empowered because of this one thing that they could do every day because of the acluistic dominant culture that's just out there. And I want to give everybody a shield on your end to go, just shield up while we can figure this out a little bit. What might that be?
I think the practice of pausing, like you said, that taking a moment and reconnecting with where the emotions are living in the body and what does the body need to regulate its nervous system. I'm also thinking about the pain and trauma that's been endured and how people are having perfectly justifiable reactions to the oppression they're experiencing. So you might not be saying this, and because I'm trying to make it not sound like my advice is to tell people to calm down, because I don't want people to calm down. I think I think sometimes the pursuit of peace requires some escalation to get people's attention. And I think that's what's happening. And I don't want people to calm down. I think their nervous systems are probably doing exactly what they're supposed to do right now in the face of danger.
But they're hurting each other, some of them.
Some of them are hurting each other, and some of them are reacting to having been hurt. And I'm having a reaction to that comment. I'm thinking about but they're hurting each other, and in the wider context of being murdered by systems. Not that they're hurting each other is justified, but I'm zooming out to the bigger picture of what is causing them to hurt each other. The pain isn't going to stop if they just stop hurting each other.
I agree.
There's a system that needs a complete overhaul. So I think I'm going to stick with what I said, just checking in with your body, knowing where your emotions are living, taking a moment to do that every day, especially after you've been harmed by someone. Because if you make it a daily practice, then it becomes familiar for you to do after something has happened that is triggering for you. Yeah, I think that's what I want to say.
That's huge. That's great. Well, Elizabeth, yes?
Yes.
Hendersonville, North Carolina. Someone's going to want to reach out to you, I'm going to guess. How do they do that? What's the best way?
Yeah, the best way is by email.
Okay.
I'm not great about picking up the phone. Email. So my email is Elizabeth, ELIZABETH, at hmacounseling.com. HMA Counseling. Elizabeth at hmacounseling.com.
All right.
That's the absolute best way to reach me.
I'm going to put that right down below.
Awesome.
As they say, and pass that through so that people can reach out, ask you questions, or see if they can get together. Do you work with groups or just single?
We do some groups, yeah.
Okay. I'm thinking
No more than 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm thinking about reaching out to the men's group and seeing, taking a tour or something like that of
Sure.
where you guys are. You have a horse out in Hendersonville?
2 horses. Yeah, one of them doesn't belong to me, but she's one of our partners.
Yeah, and just hearing, like, how about maybe a potluck? I could put together something where we can just hear what it is that you do.
Fun.
And yeah, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge you for the work that you do. I think it's the holiest place on the planet when someone shifts, like that little 8-year-old girl, and says, "Come here, horse." Mm-hmm. That to me is a miracle.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, to knowing that that's what you like and want to have more of that puts you and I in the same family, because I just love seeing someone making a change from the inside out and experiencing life more peaceful and confident and abundant. So thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I'd like to stay in touch with you. I want to get together with healers maybe annually, and we have a meetup.
Awesome.
We'll connect with you.
Awesome.
So that we can all
We want to thank our sponsor, WNC Holistic Center, located at 390 South French Broad, here in Asheville, North Carolina. At the Western North Carolina Holistic Center, they work together to create a one-stop healing shop. If you have headaches, back pain, allergies, need to lose weight, or simply want to detoxify your body and have it run in a healthier state, call them at 828-255-8333 or visit WNCHolisticCenter.com. There's never a charge for consultation, so they can assess risk-free how to help you have a healthier year. Call 828-255-8333 for your free consultation now.